is I'm going to do a little demonstration for you. It's going to be step by step, but not as in-depth as what the classes are going to be. So you know I love Impressionists. What's one of the best Impressionists? Monet. We're not going to do a water lily painting. We're going to do an iris painting in the Impressionist style out of one of his iris gardens. It's in my head, but that's where it should be. That way I'm not copying what I'm looking at. Doesn't mean you can't do that, but once you become more confident in your painting, that's what I want you to do. Paint how it made you feel. You know what an iris looks like. Now paint what it feels like. That's what we're going to do. So color-wise, I'm going to use ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson. We're going to get a beautiful purple of that. We can use purple from the tube, but I don't want you to. The reason for that, throw a little white in there, it gives you a little violet. The reason why I don't want you to is because with these colors on this palette, you can create so many different purples, and irises have so many different purples on them, in them. So again, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, a little bit of white. Look at all those different colors. Now you can only get that when you blend colors together, so don't be afraid. They may make a whole spectrum of colors on the shelf for you. You pick the ones that you're going to have to mix. I'm using a big brush. The reason for that is because I want these irises to be fluid, to be impressionistic, to be moving. So you're going to use your brush and your brush stroke to create that movement. So let's just say I'm looking at one iris up here. So there's the top of the iris. And then of course, you know, they have those beautiful beards. We're going to add that later. So this is just going to be the initial feeling of that iris. Maybe there's one here. Maybe a twisted one over here. Irises can be twisted. And then how about a little something over here? Just in the distance, kind of moving off a little bit. Once I get that on there, let's just throw in a little bit of white. This one's twisted, so let's twist the brush and show that twist. So all this is doing is layering a little bit of paint. I'm going to add a little bit of a deeper blue. How I'm going to do that is add some raw umber. Raw umber to the purple. Look what happens. Makes it deeper. Still purple, but richer, deeper, a little more raw. And that's going to give me where I want some emotional content. Where the petals meet, where there's a little bit of dark in behind. Let's add just a touch of green. I'm not going to use green from the tube. Why? Because it's so aggressive. It's going to take over the painting. So let's just use a little bit of green added to what we have going here. And we're just going to start with a little bit of a stem. Okay, so step 2. We now want to put some information on these irises to really give them some life and some interest. I've added another color to my palette. This is New Gamboge yellow. It's a very strong yellow, but yellow and purple are complementary colors, so when you blend them together, they dull each other down a little bit. So for example, I'm going to take the purple. I've gone to a slightly smaller brush just to give myself a little bit more control. And add a little bit of yellow to that. Look what happens. It just dulls the purple down a little bit. Makes it a little less aggressive. So remember, we're using ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson. Let's add a little bit of yellow to that, just so we're changing the dynamic hue of that purple. This is a great skill to learn, blending and dulling color down. The difference in the purples. I'll put one beside the other so you can really see. So by dulling down that purple, we can go into the deeper, darker shades that we don't want to be really vibrant purple. We want it to look like they're a little bit in the recesses, a little bit of the shadow of one petal over top of another petal. It's still purple, but it's kind of what Mother Nature can say. She can say anything. She can say, that might be a little on the brown side, but it's not going to take away from the rest of the purple. Creates a little bit of depth. Moving from that, let's go into some white and really strengthen up the tips of these irises. So for example, this bent one, I'm going to use this brush, and again, notice the brush stroke. It's creating the curve, the bend of that particular iris. Also, as that petal on the bearded part of the iris is moving up, let's let a little bit of light hit it. And maybe from the top, just a touch coming down from this side. Same with this little guy here. Bring a little light to him or her. Let's not be discriminatory. So you can see what the white does. So we've gone in with a little bit of dark. The dark has created some depth, and the light has created some brightness. So now I'm going to that yellow. Why? Because I really want that yellow to be in these stems. And because yellow and purple are a complementary color to each other, let's take some of that yellow and bleed that up into the purple. Reason for that? We don't want that stem to look like it ends there. We want it to look like it's moving right up into the iris. It's part of the iris. We're going to use that yellow to create that. By the same token, go back to purple, and this is the interesting part. Go back to that purple and pull some of the purple down into the stem. What does that do? It makes for continuity. So now you've got purple moving up into the iris, down the stem, and yellow moving up from the stem into the iris. So, as we're completing these irises, we talked a little bit about complementary colors. I have added a little bit of that new gamboge yellow. You can use cadmium yellow, but use cadmium yellow deep. I've just touched the edges of the irises. Notice that I've brought a little bit of that yellow onto the white of the canvas in behind. Why? Because that's really going to be where your eye wants to go. And because we're going to add these beautiful little beards with this new gamboge, so we're going to use this color right from the tube on a skinny brush with a little bit of water. That'll create movement, easy movement. And because this petal is moving over this way, I'm going to put one of those beautiful iris beards, not Irish, iris, although the Irish do have a lot of beards. And let's just create the focal point on this particular iris and bring ourselves up into that beautiful spot. Another thing that that yellow does, being right next to purple, is it's going to really bring the focus to that. We can also add just a little one over here, sitting on top of this petal here, moving off to the side, just to create a little bit of drama. And then to finish off those irises, let's just take a little bit of alizarin crimson, again, right from the tube in this case, and let's just glaze. Glazing means just dragging the brush over one little bit of the area so that we can create just a little bit more color. So again, this is because we're mixing the purple with these beautiful colors. We are now able to create several different shades of purple. Okay, so we're going to finish off this piece, show you a little bit of how to create this leafy section below the irises themselves. I'm going to go back to my big brush, because again, I don't want these to look too important. What we're going to do now is we're going to create a loose, elusive, impressionist style garden of leaves below the irises that really have no strong edges to them. The reason for that is we want the irises to take the importance. We don't want them to fight with the leaves. Impressionism is all about bringing the eye into a certain area and allowing the eye to float around, not to go to all these necessary hard edges. We've got hard edges here, we've got our focal points. Now let's finish this piece off. We're going to use that new gamboge, using all the same colors that I used in the irises, which is going to give us continuity. Throw some green in there, throw some blue in there. Very strong. This is extremely strong. And those who know me will know that I think this is too strong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a nice bunch of this paint all ready to go. Again, look at all those different colors. Then the complementary color to green is red. We also have red on our palette that we've used. It's alizarin crimson. We throw a little red in there, watch what happens. We dull down the green because this complementary colors beside each other on a palette, on a painting, look amazing, but you can blend them together on your palette and you can take the edge off of that green, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So now we have a green that is not going to take over the painting like the actual green out of the tube would have done. So now I'm going to again paint with this fat brush because I want these leaves to be unimportant and yet allow them to hold on to the rest of this piece, back the rest of this piece. So this is moving in and out of what we have already painted. The stems, which we'll bring back a little bit. Nice and soft. And now here's how we really soften it. Let's go with white. Really soften the edges of these green leaves. Add some more white here. It's important to create depth in a painting, so allow the leaf to come up and peek in behind the irises. Reason for that is it's going to allow the viewer to understand that there's behind the irises, in front of the irises. Now let's add some yellow. Let's go back and add some red and blue, which is going to create that purple again. We're going to bring that purple down into the leaves themselves. Why not? It's an impressionist piece. It's not high realism. We are creating an elusive feeling that's in our head. We don't want it to look like it's all a picket fence. So I'm going to throw the yellow just in a couple of places where I want to see it, and the purple in a couple of places where I want to see it. Go back to that middle size brush and finish off those beautiful stems. Bring them back down into the piece. Some are in behind, some are above. A little bit of light on those just to bring them forward. And then let's just soften up the edges like a good impressionist would do with some white of the top of these leaves. Reason for that is they're going to disappear. Like we talked about before, let some edges disappear in an impressionistic piece. You don't have to say everything. You don't want this to conflict with this. So let's make it disappear. It's still there, but it's much less important. Notice how I've staggered the height of some of these leaves. And I'm allowing for a soft, elusive, impressionist, leafy area. Dry brush, a little bit on the edges. What does that do? Creates some texture. It's a nice way to create texture in a piece. How you can finish this off really nicely, because we've brought some purple down into the base of the painting, you can throw just a touch of green on just a couple of spots of the iris. And what that'll do won't necessarily change the color or the look of the iris. It'll just bring a little touch of that green into the top of the painting. So we've got purple in the bottom, green in the top, all the same colors. Notice we didn't add any additional color to our palette. We used the same colors throughout to create every new color. And now we have my impression of what the irises feel like to me. This may not be exactly what they look like in real life. I don't want them to be. I don't want a photograph. I want a painting of how irises make me feel. In class, we're going to do a lot more work, be a lot longer. This is just a quick example of how we go step by step. In class online, from here on, you're going to be learning all these steps and then some, and then much more detail as well, so that we can complete a piece with more information where you need it. Hope you enjoyed this.